My name is Jake. Well, that's what I've been called ever since I started working here. Honestly, I don't know if it's my real name. They told me I was found unconscious by the side of the road near this place, and when I woke up, I didn't have a single memory, not even my own face. So I took this cleaning job at the hospital, hoping to piece together who I am. The hospital's old, and it feels like it's got secrets hiding in every corner. I work night shifts, and the place always has this weird energy at night. Maybe it's the flickering lights or the cold air that never seems to leave certain hallways, but I feel like something's always watching me. At first, it didn't bother me. I was just here to clean and get paid, hoping one day the pieces of my past would fit together. I started working on the lower floors, doing my usual rounds. I don't know why, but I ended up spending a lot of time near the morgue. It wasn't my area, but something about it just drew me in. The smell of antiseptic and cold air was almost comforting. The sound of the large metal doors always made a thudding noise when they closed, but that's not what bothered me. What really got under my skin were the whispers. They started soft, like the sound of wind brushing through an open window, but over time, they grew louder. Every time I'd walk past the morgue, I'd hear something. Faint whispers, like someone was calling my name. At first, I thought it was just my imagination, but the more I worked here, the clearer the whispers became. Sometimes, I thought I saw someone in the reflection of the windows as I walked down the hallway, but when I turned around, there was nothing there. It was like the hospital had a life of its own, something I couldn't quite understand. There were a few things I was told when I started. They handed me a folder, some paperwork, and a few simple rules to follow. I didn't think much of them at the time, just part of the usual job. They seemed odd, but I wasn't in a position to ask questions. I just wanted to work, clean, and leave. No one really talked to me much, and I didn't mind. I kept to myself. But something about this place started to feel off after a while. It wasn't just the whispers. It was the way the staff looked at me. They all acted normal on the surface, but there was this underlying tension, this coldness in the air whenever they passed by, as if they knew something I didn't. Maybe they were just nervous about the night shifts, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. As I started cleaning the east wing one night, I saw something strange, a door slightly open. It wasn't much, just a crack. I don't know why I noticed it, but it bothered me. The doors in this hospital always closed tightly, and if they were ajar even a little, something was wrong. I took a step closer, and that's when I remembered one of the rules they told me. Rule number 1, never open a door that's already ajar. If it's open even a crack, leave it alone and report it to the front desk. So I backed away. I didn't want to mess with it. I reported it like I was supposed to, but something about the door stayed with me. What could be behind it? Why was it left like that? I pushed those thoughts aside and kept working, but the unease didn't leave me. The whispers were louder tonight, echoing off the walls. I couldn't ignore them anymore. They were calling my name, or maybe not my name. It felt wrong, like the voice wasn't mine. I pushed through it, but my mind kept circling back to that door. And I kept hearing that whisper, urging me to open it. The whispers weren't the only thing getting to me. As the nights passed, I started noticing more things. Little fragments of memory that didn't quite make sense. Sometimes, I'd find myself staring at the floor, a particular tile, and then I'd have this flash of an image, me younger, standing in a place I didn't recognize. Other times, I'd catch myself remembering a face, a person I felt I should know, but it would slip away as soon as I tried to hold on to it. It was like pieces of a puzzle, but the pieces didn't fit. The more I worked here, the more I started to think I'd been here before, or at least somewhere like it. But how could that be? I had no memory of ever stepping foot in this hospital. Not until I woke up here with no recollection of my past. The morgue was where it got the worst. Every time I walked past it, the whispers would increase. And sometimes, when I checked the area, I would catch something out of the corner of my eye, a figure standing at the window watching me. But when I looked again, there was nothing. No one. Just the empty room. It was all in my head, right? That's what I told myself. Maybe I was just overthinking things. I'd heard other staff talk about strange happenings at night, but I always figured it was just hospital talk. It was easy to laugh at, but when it kept happening night after night, I couldn't dismiss it anymore. One night, I found myself lingering outside the morgue doors. I don't know why, but I was drawn to them. I stood there for a moment, just listening, and that's when I saw it, a shadow. It moved quickly, disappearing into the darkness. I didn't even have time to think about it. I turned and walked away, my heart pounding in my chest. That's when I remembered rule number 3. If the morgue doors are unlocked, lock them immediately and don't look inside. I never thought I'd be in a situation where I'd have to follow that rule, but there I was, standing just outside the morgue, trying to convince myself I didn't see anything. I wasn't supposed to be here. I wasn't supposed to linger. But something about the place had a hold on me. It was like the walls themselves were whispering my name. I shook it off, locking the door, and made my way down the hall, but the feeling didn't leave me. I couldn't understand it. What was happening here? Why did it feel like I was part of something bigger than just a night shift job? Something that didn't want me to know the truth. The next night, I came into work with a sense of dread hanging over me. The usual noises, the strange feeling of being watched, all of it was growing worse. But I kept my head down. I was just a cleaner. That's what I kept telling myself, trying to ignore everything that felt wrong. I started in the west wing, mopping the floors like usual. The place was empty, quiet, save for the hum of the lights above me. The building was a maze of sterile white walls and cold, dim hallways. Every turn felt like I was getting deeper into the heart of something that didn't want me there. It wasn't just the whispers anymore. It was a presence. That's when I saw it. A figure standing at the far end of the hallway. At first, I thought it was a staff member, but something was off. They were too still, too unmoving. They didn't even seem to notice me, despite me walking toward them. The figure was just standing there, facing the wall, not making a sound. I froze for a moment, not sure what to do. But instinct told me to keep my distance. I walked a few steps back, my heart starting to pound in my chest. The figure didn't turn around. It didn't move. It was like it was waiting for something, or maybe it was waiting for me. That's when I heard it, soft but clear as day, a whisper my name. The same whisper I'd been hearing for weeks. But this time, it didn't feel like my own mind playing tricks on me. It felt real. It felt like someone was right there, just behind me. I knew what I had to do. I remembered rule number 5. If you hear someone whisper your name, don't respond. Keep walking. I didn't look back. I didn't stop. I just kept walking, my steps echoing down the hallway, trying not to listen to the voice that seemed to follow me. The figure at the end of the hall was still there, but I didn't dare stop to see what it was. I couldn't. I just kept moving. When I finally made it to the end of the hall, I stopped to catch my breath. My skin was crawling. The air felt heavier than it ever had. I glanced around, and that's when I saw something on the floor, something shiny. I bent down without thinking. A piece of jewelry. I reached for it, my fingers brushing against the cool metal, but then I remembered rule number 9. If you find anything on the floor, like papers, jewelry, or keys, don't pick it up. Just keep walking. I pulled my hand back, my heart racing. Something inside me told me to get out of the hallway, away from whatever was happening here. The whole place felt like it was closing in on me. I didn't know if it was the whispers or the shadow in the hall, but something wasn't right. I had to leave before it all came crashing down. The night after that incident, things took a turn for the worse. I was cleaning the offices on the 3rd floor when I felt it again, the feeling of being watched. I couldn't shake it. My eyes kept darting around, but there was nothing there. Just empty rooms and flickering lights. I worked quickly, trying to get the job done and get out of there. But when I walked past a small room at the end of the hall, I saw something in the reflection of the glass. The door was cracked open just a bit, and I could see a figure in the mirror. It wasn't anyone I knew. The face was blurry, like it was out of focus. But I could make out the shape, tall, with long hair, and the way it stood there made my skin crawl. It didn't move. It just stood there, staring at me through the reflection. I froze. I should have walked away, but I couldn't. My eyes were locked on the figure, drawn to it like a magnet. It was like it was beckoning me, pulling me in. But then, I remembered rule number 6. Always check your reflection in the mirrors before leaving a room. If anything looks off, stay put and call security. I took a step back, and that's when I saw it. The face in the reflection wasn't just blurry, it was wrong. The eyes were too dark, too sunken in. The mouth twisted into a smile that didn't belong. I spun around, but there was no one there. Just an empty room. My heart was pounding, and I could feel the cold sweat on my back. I quickly left the room, but the feeling stayed with me. I had to get out of that hall. I couldn't stop thinking about that figure, and I couldn't shake the feeling that it was watching me from somewhere. I walked faster, trying to ignore the terror creeping up my spine. My mind was racing. What was going on here? What was happening to me? The whispers, the figures, the things I couldn't explain. Everything was starting to blur together. As I turned the corner to the elevator, I caught a glimpse of something down the hallway. The door was ajar again. The same door from before. It was as if it was calling me, begging me to open it. But I knew better. I couldn't risk it. I quickly punched the button for the elevator and waited, feeling the seconds stretch into eternity. My thoughts were racing. Had I really been here before? Why did it feel like the hospital was hiding something from me? When the elevator doors opened, I stepped inside, my eyes darting back to the hallway. The door was still open, but I didn't look back. I couldn't. The night dragged on, my mind reeling from everything I had seen. It was getting harder to separate reality from the nightmares I was living. I couldn't remember how long I had been working there, but it felt like forever. I felt like I was losing my grip on time, losing my grip on myself. I was assigned to clean the East Wing that night, the part of the hospital I had been avoiding for weeks. There was something wrong about it, something that made my skin crawl every time I stepped near that wing. But I didn't have a choice. I had to clean it, or risk getting in trouble. I grabbed the mop and bucket, and made my way down the dimly lit hallway. The flickering lights cast long shadows on the walls, and the air felt thicker here, as if the building was holding its breath. I walked past a row of empty rooms, hearing nothing but the sound of my own footsteps echoing through the corridor. Then, I reached the East Wing's farthest room. It was at the end of the hall, a door slightly ajar. I froze. My stomach churned. The door wasn't fully open, but it was cracked just enough to make me uneasy. I remembered rule number 1. Never open a door that's already ajar. If it's open even a crack, leave it alone and report it to the front desk. I could hear something on the other side, a faint sound like someone shifting, maybe even breathing. My heart raced as I stared at the door. Should I leave? Report it to the front desk as the rule said? But something inside me wanted to open it, just to see what was behind it. Maybe there was someone trapped in the room, or maybe something else entirely. But I didn't. I couldn't. I took a step back, then another, my eyes never leaving the door. Slowly, I turned and walked away, feeling the weight of the silence closing in behind me. My heart was pounding in my chest, but I forced myself to focus. I couldn't let fear take over. As I walked back down the hall, I thought I heard a sound, a soft whisper like a breath brushing my ear. It was so quiet, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I quickened my pace, almost running as I reached the stairs, but I could still feel the presence behind me. When I got to the staircase, I stopped, my hand resting on the railing. I glanced back over my shoulder, and for a brief second, I thought I saw something move near the cracked door. But when I looked again, the hallway was empty. It was like the entire hospital was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. I couldn't shake the feeling that the door wasn't just ajar, it was a warning. And I had narrowly avoided making a fatal mistake. That night, I was assigned to clean the lower levels near the morgue. It was the last place I wanted to go, but I had no choice. I had to do my job. The morgue always made me uneasy. It wasn't just the cold, sterile smell or the quiet atmosphere. It was the feeling that something, or someone, was watching me from behind those cold metal doors. As I walked down the long corridor toward the morgue, I felt the chill settle deeper in my bones. The lights flickered overhead, casting long shadows across the walls. It was late, and the place was completely deserted. All I could hear was the faint hum of the fluorescent lights, and the sound of my own footsteps echoing through the silence. I reached the morgue doors, and something caught my eye. One of the doors was slightly open, just a crack. I froze, staring at it, my heart hammering in my chest. Rule number 3 rushed to the front of my mind. If the morgue doors are unlocked, lock them immediately and don't look inside. I couldn't help myself. The curiosity was too strong. I wanted to see what was inside, even though I knew I shouldn't. I took a step closer, my breath catching in my throat. I tried to ignore the nagging voice in my head telling me to turn back. The door was so close. I could almost hear something inside, something soft and almost human. I grabbed the door and shut it quickly, locking it with a trembling hand. My pulse was racing, but I couldn't bring myself to leave just yet. There was something off about this place, something I couldn't explain. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and I could swear I heard a faint tapping, like someone or something was knocking on the other side of the door. I glanced down at the key in my hand, the key to the morgue. It was strange how it had been left there on the ground, almost as if it was waiting for me. I didn't remember seeing it there before, but I knew I had to lock the door. I had to keep it locked. Suddenly, I felt the weight of someone's gaze on me. I turned quickly, but no one was there. My heart skipped a beat as I scanned the hallway. The silence was suffocating, but I could swear something was waiting for me in the shadows. I gripped the key tighter, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the key wasn't just a way to lock the door. It was a key to something deeper, something darker. I rushed back to the elevator, clutching the key in my hand. My thoughts were spinning. Why had the door been open? Who had left it unlocked? And what was waiting for me on the other side? The whispers were getting louder now, and I couldn't ignore them anymore. They were calling my name, over and over, echoing through the dark halls. But I didn't stop walking. I couldn't. I had to get out of there before it was too late. The next shift was harder. I hadn't slept properly in days, and the exhaustion was starting to wear on me. But I couldn't leave. I had a job to do, and I needed the answers. The closer I got to the truth, the more everything seemed to fall apart. The whispers in the halls had become more persistent, as though they were following me. Every corner I turned, every room I entered, I felt them. Someone or something was watching. It was just past midnight when I heard it again, that soft whispering, like a breath on the back of my neck. My skin prickled as I froze in place, the mop in my hand trembling. I glanced down the hall. No one was there, but I knew what I heard. It was faint, but it was unmistakable. Someone was calling my name. I took a deep breath and tried to shake it off, but the whisper came again, clearer this time. "Come here." I whipped around, searching the empty hallway, but it was just as deserted as it had been a moment ago. The only sound was the distant hum of the overhead lights. My pulse was racing now, and I had to force myself to keep moving. I was getting too close to losing my composure, but I couldn't help myself. I was drawn to the sound, as though something inside me wanted to answer. Then I remembered rule number 5. If you hear someone whisper your name, don't respond. Keep walking. It made sense. The hospital had been clear about it. They were trying to keep us safe from whatever was down here. But I wasn't sure I was even safe in this place anymore. Every time I thought I was getting a grip on things, the reality of what was going on here dragged me back into confusion. I swallowed hard and kept walking. I knew I had to ignore the voice. I couldn't risk giving in. But the whisper was getting louder, and I could feel it pulling me toward the end of the hallway. I tried to move faster, but my legs felt like they were dragging, my body unwilling to listen. The whispering was almost constant now, overlapping, as though 100 voices were calling to me from the darkness. "Come here. Come closer." I stopped. My feet were rooted to the floor, and despite everything, I couldn't resist the pull. I took a slow, shaky step forward. My hand gripped the mop so tightly I could feel my knuckles crack. But as I took another step, I heard it, a sound that made my blood run cold. The whispering stopped, and then a voice, no, a growl, slithered into my ear, cold as ice. "Don't turn around." It was barely a whisper, but it felt like it came from right behind me. My heart pounded in my chest, and my instincts screamed at me to move, to run. But I couldn't move. I couldn't even breathe. I barely made it through the rest of my shift that night. The whispers had followed me everywhere I went, clawing at my sanity. I couldn't stop thinking about what I had heard. What had been in that voice? Something wasn't right. It wasn't just the fear, it was something else. A deep, primal feeling that I had never experienced before. And it was only getting worse. The following night, I was assigned to clean the hall near room 12. I had heard rumors about this place, about the strange patients that were kept in there, the ones who no one talked about. But it wasn't just the patients that bothered me. It was the rules. Rule number 7. Never ask questions about patients in room 12. Just clean the hall and move on. I had always obeyed that rule, of course. I had to. But tonight, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I had seen the door to room 12 once before, just a glimpse of it, and I had felt an overwhelming dread wash over me. It was like the room itself was alive, breathing. But tonight was different. As I walked down the hall, I couldn't help but notice that the door to room 12 was wide open. The light from the hallway barely reached inside, but I could see a silhouette standing just inside the door. It looked like a person, but their features were obscured in the shadows. I stopped dead in my tracks. There was no way I was supposed to be this close. The rule had been clear: never ask questions about room 12, just clean and move on. But I felt a pull. The air in the hall was thick with something I couldn't name. It felt like I was suffocating, like the room itself was pulling me in. I stood frozen, my heart racing, my hands clammy. I could feel my breath catching in my throat as the figure in the room shifted. It was tall, far too tall for a normal person. Its shape seemed to distort and bend in unnatural ways. The more I stared, the more it seemed to shimmer, as if its form was made of smoke, flickering in and out of existence. I felt my legs move without me, pulling me closer to the door. My body was acting on its own, like it was no longer my own. The closer I got, the more the air seemed to vibrate with some strange energy. It felt as though the room was alive, waiting for me to enter. I hesitated just outside the door. My mind screamed at me to stop, but my body refused to listen. And then, as if it had been waiting for this moment, the door slammed shut. The light from the hallway flickered and went out, leaving me in total darkness. I stumbled back, my heart racing, my breath coming in shallow gasps. What was that thing? What was in that room? The questions flooded my mind, but I couldn't answer them. I couldn't let myself think about it. Not now. Then, I remembered rule number 7. Never ask questions about patients in room 12. Just clean the hall and move on. I couldn't even look back. I just turned and walked away as quickly as I could, trying to shake the images from my mind. But the whispers followed me, and no matter how fast I moved, the cold fear never left me. It was only a matter of time before it would catch up. The following nights became a blur. I was sleep-deprived, my mind constantly racing with fragments of memory and glimpses of things I couldn't explain. I tried to focus on my work, but the more I cleaned the hospital, the more pieces of the puzzle started falling into place. Every time I passed the morgue, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was waiting for me, something dark and sinister. The morgue doors were always locked, always. I had been warned countless times. Rule number 3. If the morgue doors are unlocked, lock them immediately and don't look inside. And I had obeyed, of course. But tonight, something was different. It was just after 3 a.m. when I heard a faint click, followed by the soft sound of a door creaking open. I froze in place, my heart pounding. It was the morgue. The door was unlocked. A cold chill ran down my spine as I stood there, staring at the entrance. I remembered the rule, and for a moment, I thought about walking away, reporting it to the front desk. But curiosity gnawed at me. I had to know. What was inside that morgue? What had been hidden from me all this time? I took a tentative step forward, my eyes scanning the dark corridor. There was no one else around. The hospital was quiet, too quiet. The hum of the lights overhead seemed distant, muffled by the heavy silence. I reached the door and placed my hand on the cold handle. I hesitated. Rule number 3 was clear: don't look inside. But what if I could just peek? What if I could understand what was happening here? My mind raced with questions. and the temptation to know more overwhelmed me. I pulled the door open just a crack. The air inside was freezing. I couldn't see much, just a glimpse of metal trays and shadowy shapes. The morgue felt different now, more oppressive, like the walls themselves were closing in on me. But then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw something that made my blood run cold. There, on one of the trays, was a file, my file. My heart skipped a beat. I wasn't imagining things. I had been expecting answers, but I hadn't anticipated this. I reached for it, my hands trembling. As I pulled the file closer, I saw my name printed on the front. But it wasn't just my name, it was a file on me. I opened it, and as I read, everything started to fall into place. The memories, the whispers, the strange pull toward the hospital, it all made sense. I had been here before. I was the first patient. Decades ago, they had found me, unconscious, with no memory of who I was. I was part of their experiments. They had wiped my mind, over and over again, erasing my identity each time, keeping me trapped in a cycle, a prisoner of their research. The experiments had extended my life far beyond its natural span, but they kept erasing my memory, so I wouldn't remember. I was their experiment. The truth hit me like a wave, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. I had been their guinea pig, and they had been watching me all along. But why? What were they planning? I couldn't let this go. I couldn't just walk away from the truth. The hospital had been keeping me in the dark for far too long. But now, I had everything I needed to fight back. The file had given me the answers I'd been searching for, but it also gave me the strength to do something about it. I wasn't going to let them get away with this. I knew what I had to do. I had to stop them, once and for all. The whispers were louder now. They were everywhere, growing more frantic. As I made my way through the hospital, I could feel their eyes on me, the eyes of the patients they had experimented on, those who had died, but whose spirits still lingered trapped in this place. I could feel them all around me, their cold, dead hands reaching out. I didn't know how much time I had left before they would come for me, but I knew I had to act fast. I couldn't let them trap me in the cycle again. I had to break free. I made my way to the center of the hospital, the place where it all began, the old lab. The walls were lined with old, rusted equipment, remnants of the experiments that had taken place here. And at the far end of the room, behind a locked door, was the one thing I needed. The machine that kept me alive, the machine that had been keeping me from dying for decades. It was time to destroy it. I had no idea what would happen once I destroyed the machine, but I couldn't care anymore. The hospital's grip on me had to end. I slammed my shoulder into the door, forcing it open, and there it was. The machine was still running, its lights flickering like a heartbeat. I stepped forward, my hand shaking as I reached for the controls. But as I did, I heard it, a sound that made my blood run cold. It was the sound of footsteps, heavy and deliberate, echoing in the hallway. I wasn't alone. I turned, and there they were, doctors, nurses, the staff who had been watching me. But they weren't just watching anymore. They were here to finish what they had started. They had been waiting for this moment. And I realized, with a sickening certainty, that they had never intended for me to escape. This was the final part of the experiment. But they underestimated me. I had learned too much. I had seen the truth, and now I was going to make them pay. With all the strength I had left, I ripped the machine apart, sending sparks flying. The lights flickered, and the walls seemed to shake. I could feel the spirits of the patients around me, their presence growing stronger. The staff rushed forward, but it was too late. The cycle had been broken. As the last of the power drained from the machine, I felt the weight of the hospital lift from my shoulders. The whispers stopped. The shadows vanished. I had freed myself, and for the first time in years, I was free. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe for daily horror stories that get creepier every night.